With that, let's keep the momentum going as we move into our first panel discussion of the day. This panel, Unlearn to Relearn Navigating the Waves of Change, is about more than adapting. It's about thriving in uncertainty, breaking mental habits, and being brave enough to rewrite the rules we thought were fixed. Joining us on the panel are Mr. N.S. Ramnath, a journalist, data storyteller, and co author of The Aadhaar Effect, Mr. Banu Potta, global product leader and social impact strategist, Mr. Shriyank, co-founder and CTO of Seed Labs, and Mr. Karthik Shenoy, a senior analyst at Dexter Capital Advisors. Let's welcome our panelists to the stage for a conversation that will challenge how we think about learning, growth, and change itself.
Especially after I heard Anubhav's quick spiel. He was honest to a fault. I'm sure many of you were lying when you didn't raise your hands. But it's okay, as Shabari had the guts to call some of you to raise your hands and Anubhav to come in front. We hope you're going to have a great day. Even if you feel bored, it doesn't mean you're learning nothing. Everything is going into your subconscious. And everybody out here is going to really enjoy, not just today, but the days to come. So let me just start with this interesting prelude. India, as you all know, just celebrated the 79th. So Jai Hind. From bullock carts to rocket ships, we have seen plenty of things undergo learning, unlearning, change at such a rapid pace that it's simply unreal. This innovation odyssey is something that you will all be punctuating with your personal involvement going forward because you are the future. So first of all, a big round of applause to every one of you seated here today. You could have chosen to watch a Netflix somewhere, but you sat here. So a big round of applause to all of you. And we have a brilliant set of panelists today. I'm really honored to have, to begin with, Ramnath. Ramnath is better known as a journalist. You know, we don't have that many of them in our circles these days. With over 20 years of experience, he's co-authored The Aadhaar Effect, which is something we've already addressed. It's all about the Aadhaar phenomenon, very similar to a unique identity that people have in the United States called an SSN, or a social security number. That is our very own Aadhaar. He's currently involved with two media startups, one called Founding Fuel, which is essentially focused on entrepreneurship, and How India Lives, which is essentially about data journalism. Plenty to hear from you, Ramnath. One fun fact is that Ramnath and I were batchmates when we first got exposed to business school way back in the 90s. And it's awesome. He's currently working on his second book, actually, and that is about Zoho. How many of you have heard the word Zoho? Fantastic. Ramnath, we're going to collect a lot of questions and get totally challenged today. So anybody knows who the founder of Zoho is? Raise your hands and just give it a shout. Sir, please. Absolutely right. Absolutely right. So Sridhar Vembu is actually putting India on the map again because he's making everybody know that India has the potential of not just being the back office champion of the world, but creating a product that's going to go a real long way. So Ramnath is taking care of that in terms of writing about him. We then have Banu Potta. Banu is passionate about building businesses. He has been part of a product as well as development programs that enhance human potential and sustainability. And so Bhanu, very happy to have you here. You're a CXO, board director, accomplished expert, and well, the accolades go on, so I'm going to just tone it down a little bit. But with 27 years of experience, he's worked with Microsoft, Nokia, and raised plenty of series rounds in what we call in the VC world. He's currently a founding partner at Zynga Labs, a strat advisory firm. And now coming to the youngest and the most handsome. You know, between the two of us, neither of us needs a haircut when you look at it on average. You see, we take care of that. But here's Shriyank, the youngest of the group here. And Shriyank, being the youngest alum from Harvard in our group, you graduated in 22?
Correct, yes.
Correct? And he's the co-founder and CTO of Seed Labs. And Seed Labs, my dear friends, is doing something that a company called Stripe, which is very popular in the business world in the US, does. I think Stripe had a valuation of about 95 billion at one time.
That is correct, yeah.
And so he's building something which is similar to Stripe, but for the VC community. The VC, venture capital community, takes care of looking at things from companies from Andreessen Horowitz, A16Z, YC-backed startups, billion-dollar family homes, family offices, and Rain Matter and so on. So welcome. Absolute pleasure to have all three of you here today. The clock is already ticking, so let's just get going straight from the start. So, friends, the panel today is, should we really unlearn? What's the point of coming to Good Shepherd if we are going to unlearn everything, right? That should be the first thought going through your heads. But what happens in the real world is something we're going to learn from these experts. Let me start with like a one sentence for all of you, right? Question is, what does unlearn to relearn mean to you in your field, Bhanu? Can you just give us some insight?
Yeah, I think in my own mind, the way I look at unlearning and relearning is almost like a regenerative thing. Like if I'm a plant, right? I don't have the same leaves all through my life as a tree or a plant. My leaves are constantly falling off and I'm coming up with new leaves and I'm manifesting myself. And the way I would like to connect it to my own career is because after over 27 years of working, every 3 to 5 years, my skill set goes through a rejig, a revamp, right? What I needed 5 years back is no longer what I need now, and what I will need 5 years hence is no longer what I have now. So I need to, like a plant or a tree, I need to shed my leaves and I need to regenerate new leaves with new skill sets and new capabilities. That's how I would define unlearning and relearning as a part of life itself.
Okay. That's really profound. Ramnath, can we get your cue on that?
One of the earliest editors of The Economist magazine. How many of you read The Economist magazine here? Familiar with Economist?
Economist?
Great, that's fantastic. So when we were students, right, the editor was a person called Bill Emmett. And Bill Emmett used to define journalism as the purpose of journalism as something that, the purpose is to question, the challenge the assumptions. I think that is the core of unlearning as well. So in journalism is all about constantly questioning and challenging assumptions that we as journalists have that you as readers might have. And I think that is the core of what unlearning is all about.
Very good, Ramnath. Both of you have given us very profound explanations from a viewpoint of your specific areas of expertise. Young man, Shriyank, can you tell us?
Yeah, to echo on what was said before, I think I've been thinking about this more recently, and I think that if I had to use another word for this, I would call it focus. I think that as much as someone wants to do anything, it's important to figure out what to do, but to also figure out what to not do. And I think that by unlearning a lot of the old patterns, you make space for newer paradigms that allow you to then break through whatever field you're working in.
So focus, okay. So that's part of the unlearning process is what you say?
Correct.
Focus, okay. And let's see. Let's make it something a little more relevant for the young minds here. One belief from school that you had to unlearn to succeed later. Not too later for you, but later.
Man, that's a great question. I think that one belief I had to unlearn was the mindset on exams. Back when I was in school, I went to a CBSE school. And over there, a lot of my peers would compare themselves based on the marks they would get in a certain exam. And for context, there's this one subject that I did not like, chemistry. I disliked it so much that I skipped one of the exams that a lot of my other friends took, right? And my chemistry teacher asked me later, she's like, hey, why did you skip the exam? And she's like, hey, you shouldn't have done that. Like, there's all these things you will now miss. It's been about 10 years since my grade 10, and I can tell you that unlearning that mindset and then focusing on metrics that I would create for myself has allowed me to build in the areas that I'm interested in. So I think that was one example from school.
Excellent. Just because Shriyank mentioned exams, Ramnath, and I'm sure Ramnath will agree to what I have to say. Our guru, when we studied in business school in Puttaparthi, our guru said, it's more important to forget about your marks. Always remember, you will be remembered for your remarks. What people think about you is not for the marks that you get in an exam. It's how good you are as a human being, which will take you far. Ramnath?
That's, one big thing that would be to the trust in expertise, right? The trust in experts. I have to slightly expand on that. There are certain areas where expertise matters, where we have to listen to experts. For example, when you fall ill, you go to doctor, he's an expert and you listen to him. And similarly, when you're flying in a plane, the pilot is the expert, right? But there are a lot of things in life where expertise don't matter or expertise can mislead. One would be macroeconomics, right? We saw global financial crisis where every expert that we came to know, turned out to be wrong. And similarly, politics. What differentiates, let's say, a medical profession or an aeroplane from politics or economics? I think it is a complexity. In some areas where cause and effect are clear, are there, or can be figured out by expertise, you can trust the experts. But in many areas, right, society, politics, economics, or human relationships, where the cause and effects not very clear, there the only way to find out is to actually do experiments. There don't trust expertise. So that is the big.
Yeah, for me, I think what really changed is the term competition. Schools are inherently designed to make us compete in various ways, with ourselves, with our friends, with our peers, with our seniors, and also with our juniors. Get a score which our juniors can't beat, or get the medals or score in a match which our juniors can't beat, right? For me, that really shifted in the first 10 years of my career from competition to extreme collaboration, right? What I thought in school was the way to succeed in life is to be able to compete. Very quickly was, dissolved, decimated, and, vanished. And I had to relearn this whole dynamic of to really win in the world and with people around is to collaborate and not compete.
Thank you. Gents, just to kind of summarize what you just said, I think it's important not to have dogmatic views about any one particular area that you might learn, because very soon that may become irrelevant. Think about AI. AI itself says or means what? Artificial intelligence, but we've got enough of NS going on in the world, right? What is NS? Natural stupidity. So why do new things to spoil what we already have? I'm just joking, okay, guys? You can, whoever's recording it, please score that off. Please, please. But the point is, dogmatic views don't help. Unlearning what you have learned is very, very important in the real world. That's the most important thing that I've figured from this. Be flexible. Don't be hidebound. Don't say that I know everything. I was taught this in school and this is the only thing that counts. Be collaborative. Be focused. And remember, economics, whether it's macro or micro, will take you a long way as long as you're flexible. I have one last question for all the panelists before I get into the special round. Any one small habit, that you felt was holding you back, that made a difference, yeah? But when you went out into the real world, you had to say, hey, this is not going to help me. And you had to unlearn that. Banu, would you like to take that first?
Tricky one.
But I made you smile.
Yes. One habit. I think for me, one habit again, I'm kind of connecting my life as a student and then my later on life, right? I used to plan incessantly. I used to plan like hell. I used to plan, if I have to plan 100%, I used to plan for 120% and come up with what all can go wrong and think about what needs to happen for that. I used to plan like crazy. And when I came through into my work life, I started discovering that for a large part of what happens in life, you can't plan. And for a large part of what happens with the team around you and the people around you in your organization and your team, firstly, you can't plan for yourself, forget about planning for them, right? So I think that habit of over-planning, I had to deconstruct and then kind of come up with this ability to deal with ambiguity and have some sort of route, but not over-detail it and be very flexible.
Excellent.
I think one habit that I really changed, and I'll generalize it after, is reading. Earlier, I used to be very thorough in what I would read, and even if I did not like something, I would continue to see through to the end. I learned that was really stopping me from picking the things I wanted, and covering more knowledge, right? So I think that trading off perfection or completion to allow myself to experiment, that was a huge shift for me. And that permeated from reading all the way to programming.
Okay, I'll say something that might seem very trivial, but as you get older or even at your age, it is probably not, and it has something to do with health. The habit I gave up was sugar, after a very long time, and not completely. 6 days a week, I don't eat sugar, and that has changed a lot. That has helped me a lot, and
I have to interject there. At your age, your minds are young, your bodies are young, and everything in you cooperates with all your thoughts. Okay, you may have certain thoughts that may be wavering, but that's fine. Thoughts are like passing clouds. They'll come, they'll go. You stick to what you have to do, you will succeed. And don't be dogmatic about things. But health is one thing I'd like to touch upon. Very late in life, I realized that health is more important. In fact, our scriptures tell us this. If wealth is lost, nothing is lost. If health is lost, something is lost. If character is lost, everything is lost. So let's keep that in mind as we progress through our lives, okay? Couple of personal unlearning stories. Can we hit that for a few minutes? Unlearning, yeah? So let's say you had an old approach, Ramnath, in what you did, because founding Fuel, then Economist, and Harvard, everything put together. Any old approach that stopped you a lot, and then you either restarted it or changed to something else? It's something similar to my earlier question, but if you would like to elaborate.
The way I write, earlier, writing is core to my work, right? As a journalist, as an author. So one of the things that I used to be very careful about when in the early part of my life was that to get it right the first time. So once you write a sentence or a paragraph, don't go back to it. And that is how we grew up, right? In school, you don't get a second chance to write your question papers, or in newspapers, you have to really write it very fast and get it right this first time and send off the report. But increasingly, what I kind of changed that approach, the way I do it now is to do multiple iterations of writing. So first, I actually dictate through Whisper app and then get it transcribed and then work on it. Do multiple iterations, and I find my writing to have gotten better because of this different approach.
Iterative approach, okay, using technology. Yeah? You want to take that, Sriyank?
Yeah, I think one thing, so there's a couple examples, but I think the example I'll stick to is coding, right? So that is integral to a lot of what I do. And just about 4 years ago, all code had to be written manually, which is insane, right? So at that point in time, given that you can only write so much code in a certain set of time, you'd need to, again, spend a lot of time thinking about what's the best way to do it once, and then write it. However, today, we're in a world in which you can iterate at the speed of thought by just talking to a machine. It's become super easy to go iterate through multiple solutions, take different pieces of what works and what doesn't work, and then combine it into a solution that would be a lot better than if someone had just spent the same block of time writing it once. So that was a very different process to be able to outsource something that I had thought was very crucial to my role, but then I had separated it from the end benefit, and then it turns out that that has enabled me to move faster in my own work.
So iteration, time saving, cost saving, all that came out from this new approach.
Correct, yes.
One of the recent unlearning and relearning process which I went through in the last 8 years was about the way I learn new things. For a large part of my life, the way I learned was by direct immersion, like reading books, reading material, studying that subject, trying to talk to people who are in the subject. And that's typically how we have been taught. That's how you learn new stuff, right? In the last 7 to 8 years, what I realized is one of the best way to tail end your learning process is actually to teach it to somebody, right? So in my own learning process, what I did is I reconfigured my learning process and always add a teach component to the new topic which I'm trying to learn. And the teach could be I can teach to one person, I can teach to 3 people, or I can teach a difficult concept to a youngster, right? Whatever scale of teaching is not important, but the fact that you do your learning immersions and then you tail end that with a teaching process, which kind of does 2 things to me, at least from my point of view. One is it forces me cognitively to simplify the complex learning concepts into extremely salient bullet points to convey in a way that the others can remember, right? Which then sort of etches those concepts into my own cognitive wall better. Number 2, by doing that, and what I also started doing is I try to teach that topic to somebody who's not interested in that topic. Because I have then the additional burden of making it interesting to them. So I have to figure out how to make it interesting to them, right? But in that process and conversation, the people who don't know the topic or not interested in the topic, the questions they ask are going to be totally different from the questions which somebody who's super interested in the topic asks. So I think this is some reconfiguration I have done in the last 7, 8 years about my own learning process.
And actually, just to add on to that, to actually show an example of Banu's ability to change this, right? So we were in the same car and we were coming over, and I pulled out my laptop and I pushed a piece of writing into his hands. And anyone could have just taken a quick glance at it and said, hey, look, this looks good. Good job, continue and move on. Banu actually took the time to go through each argument, and he gave me such detailed points. I still need to work through those points, but the ability to just take something, critically assess it, and then again, teach the other person, I really appreciated that about how he did that.
Oh, so we already have a fan club here between the 2 of them. Let's now get to the most important part. Who was the person who raised his hands or her hands saying it was boring? May I have the same hand go up? No, I'm just joking, not you again. All right. So, just to see if you were attentive, who's the journalist amongst us? Shriyank? Ramnath? Got it, Ramnath. Who's the person with digital product experience amongst us? Bhanu? Correct, Bhanu. And the young man, the handsome man, is anyway the startup founder. We now open it to questions, okay? Journalist, global CXO, digital products, startup founder. If we can please have a mic here and start allowing our young minds to pick the brains of these not so young minds, I'd appreciate it. So, can we have a mic?
I have a question here. Yeah. So it's a little long question.
Yeah, go ahead. Answer may be short though.
So for my question, I'll take Shriyank's into context. So you're a CTO at age 25. And that is something very great. You've worked hard, you've worked your way to Harvard, your marks, your co-curriculars, your holistic qualities, everything got you there. But a lot of youth today, if you go and see LinkedIn, and you would see some 14-year-olds end up calling themselves as CEOs and founders. And they glorify success so much. And ironically, they're also glorifying failure. They think doing a startup and failing is fine. It's good to be a dropout because Bill Gates was one. But they don't realize that dropping out, having failed startups, or even burning VC money is not a joke. And it's good to hate on people with degrees and celebrate dropout billionaires. So just wanted to get your thoughts on that.
Wow, this can be a multi-hour conversation, which I've had with both Karthik and Banu separately, and a few of my other friends over there. I think one thing which I would, okay, there's a lot of angles upon which we can address this, but I'd actually like to take Gokul's key idea, which he presented earlier, where he said, hey, it's not really about the destination, but it's about like what journey you take. And today, I think one of the biggest flaws that I think is widespread is people not focusing on actually solving the problem they are claiming to focus on, but rather just talking about it. And I think a large part of this is because of the way social media works. Everyone seems to be online. Everyone seems to be getting a lot of their own priors by just reading this information. So, and I think people are now realizing that you can game it. Being fairly close to a lot of the venture money, what I can tell you is that the conversations that people are trying to have on Twitter is not in reality what they talk behind closed doors, right? So I think that, I don't have a social media presence at all, and we still have what I would say is, a pretty booming company. So I would say focus on the problem rather than just the presentation on social media. But again, lots to unpack there. Happy to do this offline.
Sorry, I have to add one more thing to what Shriyank said. From my experience as an investment banker, started in 2019, lots of money flowed into India. Plenty, because they had very low interest rates in the US, and that's where all the money concentrates. Came to India, they looked for intellectual capital, put in the money, raised valuations. If you heard of the company called SoftBank, Masayoshi Son, $100 billion vision fund, he started writing checks worth 10 billion, okay, upwards of 1 billion for a Series A. A Series A is when you go for the first time, like Shriyank takes his company for the first time to an institution and says, please give me some money, I want to grow this. What happened after that was that everybody looked at only valuation, but no value creation. So I think what Shriyank was saying, just to kind of summarize it, is that focus on value, not on value creation. I beg your pardon.
Yeah.
Not on valuation.
I think one small thing I would just like to add is, if at all people are going on the journey of startup founders, like Shriyank said, focus on solving the problem. And like Karthik is saying, talking about when you raise, there are two things to look at. Raise only what you need. First, you learn how to manage the money you raise. A lot of founders have been messed up by the more than required money, or when the money comes in, the lack of ability to manage that money properly. So learn those two things before you go for a raise.
Great points. Thank you. Next question, please. Anybody wants to be a journalist? We have a journalist in the house.
Yeah, to the journalist, I would like to ask a question that if you were to go into journalism, would you take media or media communications or English literature language?
I mean, just do what you like. If you like physics, chemistry, philosophy, whatever it might be, do that. Because the way you learn journalism is not by sitting in the class, but by actually doing journalism, by writing stories, going out, reporting, and stuff like that. So, if you want to become a journalist, study what you like. Not, if you want to study, understand media and stuff like that, you can go study a media journalism degree or post-graduation. Otherwise, whatever your favorite subject is, I think that's what I would suggest you do.
Thank you.
If I may just ask a question that didn't come from him to you. What could these young minds who want to get into journalism do starting now, say in their summer program, if they don't yet have the opportunity to go to journalism school? What do you suggest that they could do?
Actually start writing. And one thing to remember is that journalism is not just about writing. The more important part of journalism is actually reporting. Reporting basically means you go out, talk to people, observe, understand. That is the 80% of journalism, and writing is only 20% of journalism. That 80% of what you do as a journalist is not important, not just for journalism, but also for any kind of work that you do. For example, if you want to become an investment manager, that 80%, the reporting that you do, becomes extremely important, right?
Excellent. And also, young friends here, please remember, technology is moving so fast, it even can write out the right spellings of the words that you may not know. But make it a point to use a dictionary. Make it a point to learn the spellings and improve your own handwriting so you can read what you yourself are writing. It goes a very long way. Except maybe if you want to be a doctor, I guess. Right? Yeah. Next question. We haven't had any questions from this side. The young girls here are a little quiet. If you could just move a little to your left, please. Oh, he has a question? Okay, we'll let them think till then. Yeah.
In my opinion,
There's a question there.
It's okay, you can ask.
Okay.
Yeah, after him, can you take that?
So, in my opinion, journalism is, as Sir said, a form of reporting that opens multiple worldly issues to public and analysis and stuff, and that can provoke them to create questions and have opinions. Now, this is all very intangible, and the public will always have opinions that promotes voting. But how can journalism have a very tangible and physical effect on the world?
Hey, thanks. I'll go back to the question that the comment that I made earlier, that the purpose of journalism is to question assumptions, right? And why is that important? Because if you look at the decisions that we make, the actions that we do, they're all dependent on what we can say the dominant narrative, right? The dominant narrative actually says certain things, right? A is good, B is bad. A, for example, free market is always good. That is one dominant narrative, which was dominant narrative till, let's say, 2008. Or if you're in USSR or Russia, communism is, the best way to organize society and economy. That is the dominant narrative, right? And the job of a journalist is to find the anomalies. What goes against that dominant narrative by going down to the ground and actually report, find out. So one part of journalism, the way it changes the question, changes the way people think, is to question the dominant narrative, right? That dominant narrative can be at a national level, or it could be even at an organizational level. As an organization, they might, a company might think that OpenAI, for example, they might think that they are doing great service to entire universe, but a journalist would actually question that and ask, can AI be more ethical, right? So, number one, job of the journalist is to question the dominant narrative, find out the anomalies, and report that. And then, how does the the narrative change? That happens because of people like entrepreneurs who actually constantly do experiments that let us find a different way of doing things. So journalist's job is to kind of talk about dominant narratives, find out anomalies, and write about all the new experiments that is going on ground, and that is how the change happens.
Yeah, I would just, I'm wearing a consumer hat in answering that question. You answered as a journalist. I'm answering as a reader of work of people like you. For me, I look at whether the journalist is holding us, leaders and society, accountable for what we said we are doing, and are we doing that or not. So for me, the key word is the journalist holding us accountable?
Young lady there. Yeah.
Yeah. Hi. So we talked about Marx some time ago and how that is what you need to unlearn to be able to, grow and get more successful. But as somebody who's going through a quite rigorous application process right now and who's submitting drafts, working on exams, working on tests, that just feels a little abstract because right now marks do matter. My grades will determine what college I go to and henceforth. But so yeah, exactly. It feels very abstract, something that I don't see as a reality for myself. So what are your thoughts on that?
Oh my God, I have so many thoughts on this. I'll now use my age to go and explain this, right? So about 8 years ago, I was in grade 12, right? Wow. And like if you asked me 8 years ago, like, hey, where do you see yourself in 8 years? I could not tell you that I'd be here in this auditorium, right? So I'd like to use that as a way of, or rather, I'd like to provide a tool, which is, I think it's interesting to like look at events on like 3 different like timelines. One is like an immediate timeline, so how does this affect you like 1 week out, and like a year out, and then like a decade out, right? And I can tell you that a lot of the things that I thought when I was in grade 12, a lot of it I have done, and I've done a lot of new things that have allowed me to become who I am today. So I think looking at how marks will affect you a year from now, I think it looks very important. But a few years down the road, when you're like, I did not know anyone's marks over here. They don't know mine, whether it was good or bad, maybe bad, right? So I think looking at it on a long-term horizon, you realize that the only thing that matters is, are you working towards what you find interesting, right? And yeah, I'll leave it over there. Again, happy to answer parts of this plan.
Just to add, Shabari said that he took 5 years at engineering school. Look at him today. And he didn't even pass his engineering. I took 5 years. I was lucky to pass my engineering. Just live in the moment. Don't overthink it. Focus on what is present today. The tomorrow will take care of itself. And that is also the reason why they say the present is a gift. So that's a great question, though, and I think they both covered it well. Can I request somebody from this section, our dear friends who've come from outside Good Shepherd, to ask a question, if I can ask any one of you? Any question?
We see a hand over there. Yeah.
So while the next question comes up, I'd like to add something to the question of the lady and your response. The rush of activities which are thrown at you in the high school, sometimes you might feel that, why are we doing so many? But I think I would ask you to look at, this is the practice for the hustle in life later on. It doesn't matter what activity you're doing. It matters that you're able to take multiple activities, juggle them, reorganize yourself, go through the mess, figure out your way of organizing it. That part of the hustle is a superpower tomorrow later on for you. So it's less about what activities, but it is about how you are balancing and how you are living through that chaos. That is the extraction which will be far more valuable for you later on.
Well encapsulated, because that's what Gokul told us with those beautiful slides. It's the process. Focus on the process. You will get the phalas as you go by. Because if you end with one single phala at the end of the journey, it's not going to be a very happy way of living life. I think we'll take one last question. Yeah, all right. If we've got one, she was standing there. If you don't mind, we'll take that and one more here. Yeah.
So the question to you is, who inspired you to be a journalist? Who or what inspired you to be a journalist?
Ramnath, the rock star. Today is the journalism day.
See, actually, that is one thing, right? When I started, what inspired me to become a journalist is the freedom to dress badly and to travel a lot, meet a lot of people. But a lot of things in life, I realized is that it is not when you start doing that, it's not that you have a very great, noble intention to start something, but it is an emergent phenomenon, right? So journalism also, when I started journalism, it was for very trivial things, like I wanted to travel, meet a lot of people, write and stuff like that. But over the 20 years that I've done, I actually, what I now considered to be the purpose of journalism and all those things emerged by doing it, by talking to people, by observing what's going on. I think that is true with a lot of other things, because one of the things that we tend to think is that we have to have a very noble goal, but I mean, in some cases it happens for doctors and others. But for, I think 80-90% of the population, we start doing it and find the purpose in what we do rather than, chasing some purpose.
Can we take that last question?
So to be a journalist, is there any subject that you have to choose specifically to, in general?
No, actually now, I mean, once upon a time, right, journalism was pretty narrow. If you look at in India, when I grew up, there was one newspaper that we all subscribed to. If you're in South, you subscribe to Hindu. If you're in Calcutta, Statesman, Bombay, Times of India, Delhi, Hindustan Times. Very narrow, right? Now it has become extremely diverse. So even the journalism, you should not think in terms of only newspapers, think of blogs, think of YouTube channels. Everything is a part of the broader thing called journalism. So the more abstract, the more narrow, you'll always find a niche. So the thing is, it's not that what you have to study to become a journalist, but study what you really love, what you really like, what you're passionate about, and find a way to express that, talk about that to a large audience. That I think would be a best way to go about it.
So I think I'm going to wrap this up with that being the last question for people on the stage, but that doesn't mean you can't approach us. As soon as we step off the stage, you can please mob him and take his autographs. And please don't ignore these two gents who have also come all the way. Ask them more questions. Thank you all for being such a patient audience. Thank you. Thank you, gents. Thank you.
A heartfelt thank you to our panelists, Mr. Ramnath, Mr. Bhanu, Mr. Shriyank, and Mr. Karthik for steering such an engaging and insightful discussion. You've left us with a powerful reminder. In order to grow, we must sometimes let go of outdated habits, limiting beliefs, and the comfort of the familiar.
Thank you for sharing your experiences, wisdom, and challenges so openly. We truly appreciate the honesty and depth you brought to this conversation.